The following program does not necessarily reflect the opinions and viewpoints of the staff and management of the station.
Welcome to the wonderful world of seniors, the best of all worlds. You now have the time, resources, and ability to enjoy what you have worked for all your life. So let's explore the many possibilities available to seniors on Senior World Radio. Senior World Radio is your source for senior citizens-related topics, information, and entertainment. Now, here is your host of Senior World Radio, Glenn Howard.
Thanks so much for joining us today on Senior World Radio. It's such a delight to have you every week when we get together and talk about seniors, because everybody knows seniors are young at heart and twice as smart. I'm looking forward today, especially because I've got a good friend who's been with me a couple of times in the past. Unfortunately, it's been a long time since we've had him on the show. But Jim Keating, K-E-A-T-I-N-G, Jim Keating, is the Executive Director of the Parkinson Foundation of Oklahoma. Jim, it's good to have you back again.
Thank you, Glenn. Glad to be back.
It's always good to have you. Since the last time we visited, of course, Parkinson's has become a little bit more painful subject to me. Several years ago, when I was living in Budapest, Hungary, had a man in my church about 50, 55 years of age who developed Parkinson's. And at that time, I saw the tremor. He was having difficulty writing and doing some of the things. But to me, it was an inconvenience. It wasn't that big a deal, and I wasn't around to see it in the later stages. But over the last few months, watching my good friend, in fact, I think I introduced you to him,
yes, you
Dr.
did.
Horace Ward Jr.,
Yes, sir.
classmate of mine who was a brilliant fellow. He had a PhD from Ohio State University, and next to the Lord, he thought Ohio State was about as good as they could come. He was the president of a school on the West Coast. He was dean of students at Lee College. Just a tremendous guy and a great voice. He was a wonderful singer. Mm-hmm. But I watched him here a few years ago when he came down with Parkinson's and began having the difficulties and, the usual things. And it was always interesting to me the way that it affected him. For example, even when he was having difficulty staying awake, doing anything, you could start singing and he could break out in a song with a beautiful voice. In fact, just about a month before we lost him, he was in a nursing home over in Yukon. And we went by and visited with him, and he appeared to be asleep all the time. We didn't know if he was really hearing us or not.
Yeah.
Visited with his wife there. And finally, as we got ready to go, my wife turned to me and said, "Why don't we sing a song with him?"
Oh, yeah.
So we started singing the old song, "Amazing Grace, How Sweet the Sound." Horace broke out in his beautiful tenor voice, just as clear as a bell. Sung that song, and people up and down the halls started coming into the room. They wanted to get in on that, and it was really the last meaningful interaction we had with him. And then, as I watched him and saw that disease begin to shut down his body and finally up into the throat to where he could no longer eat on his own. And it was a matter of either making a vegetable and putting a tube down him and feeding him that way or letting him go. And nobody wanted to keep him around like that. And so just a couple of months ago, we had to let him go. And it just brought the horrors of Parkinson's disease home to me in a way that I've never experienced it before. I think if I were to describe what I consider to be the worst disease in the world, it's got to be Lou Gehrig's disease. I've watched people go with that. That one is horrible. I remember losing a man in our church where the only thing he could do was blink his eye before we finally lost him. But Parkinson's comes close. The other day we had Alzheimer's on here talking about that, and that's a bad disease. But Alzheimer's patients are happy in most cases. They don't really, they don't have a memory. They don't remember what's going on, and it does take their life, and it's a horrible disease, and it's one that we dread. But Parkinson's comes awful close to that. is there any hope for this thing? I know a few years ago we had, who was the movie star that
Michael J. Fox
brought so much attention to it?
Yeah.
We haven't talked for a couple of 3 years, and I haven't had any real interaction except my experience with horse. But
Yeah.
I wanted to bring you on today and hopefully have some good news that, hey, we're making progress against this horrible disease.
Oh yeah.
Tell me, what's going on?
Well, I'm glad you had me on, Glenn, because there's a lot of progress that's being made. In fact, people with, and I know Horace. I don't know him well. I don't know him like you, but I remember when you and I went to his house and his wife, or maybe he was playing the piano, and then
I think I played the piano.
You played the piano,
Yeah.
and then he busted out in the garden, and it was beautiful, clear as a bell. And you just think of gifts like that. But what we see now is with medications, exercise, speech therapy, that really people that have Parkinson's disease live about as long as anybody else. It really doesn't cut off the lifespan.
Oh, really?
It becomes an issue of what kind of quality are you going to have in your life as you live through your years. So we found that people who, say you're diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and then if you start on an exercise regimen and good nutrition and undergo continuing speech therapy, because people with Parkinson's disease, many of them lose their ability to speak clearly. And I think that happened to Horace, and it happens to just about everybody. So with speech therapy, which we partner with Integris and offer speech therapy at our office, it can add years and quality, because what happens is that people with Parkinson's disease, they gradually lose their mobility, and they get rigid, they get kind of stiff, and so then it becomes an issue of going out in public. A lot of them really don't enjoy going out in public or going to a restaurant anymore. But what we found is that people who exercise and they improve their flexibility and their strength and their mobility, able to get around, plus they do speech therapy, they're able to, we've seen many, many people get out, become more social, because they can go to the restaurant. They don't have to feel conspicuous, and they can order from the menu in a loud voice and eat their dinner and socialize just like anybody else. So it is different now, and what our message is if a listener has not been diagnosed or thinks they might have Parkinson's disease, make sure that they go to a neurologist or preferably a movement disorder specialist, get the diagnosis, and then call the Parkinson Foundation of Oklahoma, because we can then help you with support groups, speech, exercise, family consultations, conference. We can help you navigate the ever-changing waters of Parkinson's disease, because it is very challenging. It's another neurodegenerative disease in the same family as Alzheimer's disease, but it's just different. And it primarily affects the way it affects mobilization of people.
Is the tremors the first indication for most people?
For most people, yes. About 70% of people have a resting tremor as opposed to an active tremor. So when the person's hand is to their side or just resting on the table, you might see a twitch or just a wiggle of one finger or another. It's not on both sides of the body. It starts out on one side of the body. It may be a leg. It may be a tongue, or maybe your head starts bobbing a little bit. But primarily, it's usually a finger or a hand that just has a slight shake. And that's the time when you see evidence of that or decreased mobility is the time to make an appointment with a neurologist, not a family practice doctor, but get a referral from your family practice doctor to go see a neurologist or movement disorder specialist and get a true diagnosis. The earlier you start on medication, the proper medication, and an exercise program, then the better off you're going to be for the long term.
Jim, I don't think I've ever known a woman to have Parkinson's. Is this a man's only disease?
That's a good question. It's about 60% male, 40% female.
So women do have it, same type symptoms,
same type symptoms. And it goes along all cultural lines, ethnic lines, particularly Asian, Caucasian, fewer African Americans have Parkinson's disease, which is kind of interesting, but you don't run across too many African Americans who have it.
Are we finding any causal effect in any? I was talking to a friend just recently, mentioned something about having you on, and he said that he had a grandfather, and the doctors had thought maybe because in early years he had worked in the paint business, and there was a correlation. Is there any basis for that? Do we have any causal relationship at all that we know of?
There could be causal relationship between chemicals, environmental chemicals. It's pretty prevalent in rural areas, probably more prevalent in rural areas than it is in urban areas because of pesticides, herbicides. Well water could be a cause of it. We see really it's a lot of Vietnamese veterans, people who fought in Vietnam.
Agent Orange.
With Agent Orange, there's a definite connection with there. But if you what I've read lately is that if you couple some environmental factors like pesticides on the farm with the tendency to have genetic factors, say it was in your family several generations ago, or you might have a tendency in your family to have that genetic makeup, then you couple the genetic makeup with the environmental factors and you can get Parkinson's disease. So yes, there's a correlation, but nobody knows for sure what that correlation is.
How did you get involved in this?
I started the Parkinson Foundation of Oklahoma about a little over 10 years ago, and I don't have it, and nobody in my family has Parkinson's disease, but you were mentioning horrible diseases before. My first wife, who's now deceased, had Huntington's disease, which is on par with ALS as far as being devastating disease. But through my work with Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation and neurologists in Oklahoma City, and just being familiar with support groups in the Huntington's world, I noticed that there was not an organization that was dedicated to helping people who are dealing with Parkinson's disease. There are about 15,000 people in Oklahoma who have Parkinson's disease. There was not a statewide organization that was dedicated to helping these people.
I'm Glenn Howard, Senior World Radio, visiting today with Jim Keating. Jim is the Executive Director of the Parkinson's Foundation of Oklahoma, a good organization to know if you know somebody who has Parkinson's. But we got to take a break for just a moment. We're going to be coming right back, so please stay right here with us.
You're nobody till somebody loves you. You're nobody till
Have you ever had a problem, but it seemed like there was no one who could help? You spent hours calling around, being referred from one place to the next. Well, not anymore. I want to tell you about a free and easy-to-use service in Oklahoma. 211 is a simple 3-digit phone number to get help or to give help when you don't know where to turn. Dialing 211 only takes a minute, and you are connected with a caring Oklahoman who will help you find the assistance you've been looking for. With access to over 13,000 programs, Heartline 211 can connect you to local resources for many different needs, including health care, food, counseling, rent assistance, disability assistance, job services, and much more. 211 is a service of Heartline, a United Way partner agency. 211, the right first call to get help or give help 24 hours a day.
Hi, my name's Jason Ledlow, president of UT Phone, the ultimate telephone service. We're proud to be a sponsor of Senior World Radio with Glenn Howard. UT Phone is dedicated to providing Oklahomans affordable telephone service all across our great state. We have Lifeline home phone service starting at just $1.95. That's right, just $1.95, and most of Oklahoma's seniors qualify for this reduced home phone service. They get to keep their old home phone number, and it even includes long distance. Another great feature of UT Phone's customers really like is that it includes repair service. That's right, any repairs at no additional charge. With many telephone services charging $40 to $50 per month, it makes sense to switch your service to UT Phone. This service is a federal program that is provided through the Universal Service Fund. There is only one per household, so make it UT Phone's home phone service for $1.95. Give us a call at 800-996-0098. Again, call 800-996-0098.
I've made up my mind.
Welcome back to Senior World Radio. I'm Glenn Howard. We're visiting today with Jim Keating. Jim is the executive director of the Parkinson's Foundation of Oklahoma. Jim, I notice you've got a golf tournament coming up in September to support Parkinson's. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yes, we are a 501c3 nonprofit charity. And so the only way we have to raise money to support all of our programs and services is to go out and raise it. We don't take any government money, but we do have community events. The next community event that we will have is a golf scramble at the Greens Country Club on Monday, September 22nd. The Greens Country Club is just east of Mercy Hospital, and this will be the 10th tournament that we've had there. It's always a great time. There are morning and afternoon tee times available for anyone who likes to play golf. We have sponsorships available, presenting sponsor and gold, silver, bronze sponsors, and tee and green sponsors, all different price levels. But we do encourage people to support the organization because we really feel like we touch thousands of lives every year, and the golf tournament is one way that we can support those programs.
And that date again is?
September 22nd, and it's morning and afternoon tee times. And people can let us know that they're interested by calling the Parkinson Foundation of Oklahoma, 405-810-0695, or you can find more information at our website, which is parkinsonoklahoma.com.
parkinsonoklahoma.com.
Yes.
Let's go back to talking a little bit more about this disease, Jim. What kind of progress? All the publicity a few years ago, it seemed like everybody was kind of conscious of it. Maybe it's just me, but except for my good friend, I really haven't heard that much about it. It's not seemingly getting the press that at one time did. Is that true, or is I just not conscious of it? And is that an indication of progress, or
well, one of the things,
not?
One of the things we talked about Michael J. Fox earlier. He started a foundation that has raised $200 million specifically for Parkinson research. So between what he has given to Parkinson research and grants from the National Institutes of Health, there's been really quite a bit of progress. The medications keep improving. And of course, now we talked about exercise earlier, but exercise has been shown to be a real benefit for delaying the effects of the disease. Of course, Muhammad Ali has Parkinson's, so he has a lot of medical facilities down in the Scottsdale, Arizona area. And I guess being in the industry, I hear about a lot of things that are going on nationally as well as locally. So, in fact, there was an article in the paper last week about a guy who is raising money for one of the organizations, 50 paintings, 50 states in 50 days, raising money for local Parkinson organizations. So I see a lot of progress, but I think it's one of those deals where if you're not in that world on a daily basis, maybe you miss some of the things that are going on with the disease. But there has been a lot of progress. There's nothing that years ago we talked about stem cell treatments, we talked about gene therapy, and as of yet, there's nothing definitive that has come out that would really show that there is a cure that is imminent. It could happen at any time. There could be discovery, but the treatments for the disease keep getting better and better.
How long after most people have really developed symptoms do they become aware of it enough to try to get it diagnosed? I mean, is this one of those secret diseases that you may notice a little something, but you don't pay that much attention to it, think, well, I'm just getting older, or maybe it's nerves or whatever the case may be,
yes,
and never really follow through?
That does happen. That does happen because there might be some time where you develop a little tremor in your hand or finger, so you decide when you're in public, you're going to put your hand in your pocket. You're going to sit on your hand when you're in a chair just so that nobody will see the tremor. But the sooner that you can get diagnosed and on medication and exercise program, then really the better off any person is going to be, because there can be some secretive aspect. People get embarrassed, and then you get embarrassed. You find out you think you have a disease, and it may turn out to be Parkinson's, may turn out to be essential tremor, which is another disease that's similar to Parkinson's, or maybe you're just getting a little bit older and just get stiff in the joints or whatever it may be. But having a definitive diagnosis is very, very helpful.
Does a person who is experiencing Parkinson's generally tend to realize it themselves, or is it a spouse or a close friend or someone in the family who recognizes some symptoms and calls attention to it and tries to get a little bit more investigation into the possibility?
That's a good question. I would say that most people know that there's something wrong.
But don't know what.
Don't know what it is. Maybe they don't sleep as well. Maybe they have a leg that is giving them problems. Maybe they're just stiffer. And of course, as we grow older, it is harder to move. It's harder to get out of bed, and it's harder to maybe walk really fast. But people with Parkinson's disease, rigidity is going to be a primary symptom. A tremor, most people do have a tremor, although 70% of the people have a tremor. So that's not everybody. That means 30% do not have a tremor. Imbalance is another problem, and just slowness of movement can be a signal that you may be dealing with Parkinson's disease. But a neurologist or movement disorder specialist can really tell you.
You mentioned the importance of exercise. Do you find that exercise earlier, before symptoms ever? In other words, is a person who is involved in a lifestyle exercise program throughout life tend to have less problems, or is this the kind of thing you can wait until you begin to see some symptoms and experience and then jump in and try to compensate and get things going?
Yeah, at some point you have to decide to exercise. Whether you've been working out your whole life and that's just part of who you are, exercise, that's fantastic. If you get Parkinson's disease at that point, you're already on an exercise regimen. If you're new to the disease, recently diagnosed, and decide you want to start exercising, that's fantastic too, because it has good exercise, flexibility, strength, and lots of movement, cardio movement, will ultimately lead to a higher quality of life because you're going to be able to move better for a longer period of time. What I see is people who decide that they want to fight this disease, fight back against the ravages of Parkinson's disease, do really well for, depending on how old they are, they'll do well for 20 or 25 or 30 years. People who give up and just hit the remote on their TV and they're on the couch all the time, they don't do well and they go down really fast.
Jim, tell our audience about some of the services that you provide to families who have Parkinson's.
We offer many services. I encourage people to call the Parkinson Foundation at 810-0695. Schedule a time to come in and visit with me, and we'll talk about the services that are available, which are support groups all over the state. And the support groups are fantastic as far as getting with other people and finding out what works, what doesn't work, learning more about the disease and how to cope with the disease. We also have a speech therapy class called Speak Out and Loud Crowd that we partner with Integris Health on.
Speak Out and
Speak Out.
Loud Crowd?
Loud Crowd, yeah.
Okay.
For people who have been through a 4-week therapy session. Every week, these people come to our office at the Parkinson Foundation and they practice their louder voices.
Okay.
And it's great social interaction, and plus they can keep their loud voice after they've gone through the initial therapy.
Remind me of the old Saturday Night Live Loud Talkers of America Association.
That's funny. Yeah, well, this is the Loud Crowd, and they get pretty loud. In fact, twice a month they have choir practice. So people who have Parkinson's disease, Horace would have loved that choir because he could have sung in it. But we have special events that the choir sings at, and they practice twice a month. And it's just great practice, and it's great social interaction. So we have that, and then we encourage exercise plan through Integris and through Mercy Health. Their exercise plans, they're readily available, and we encourage people to enroll in those plans.
It's always surprising how so many diseases you keep coming back to exercise, good nutrition, basic healthy living. It makes a difference, doesn't it?
Tremendous difference. It's just I know people who have decided that Parkinson is not going to get the best of them, and they may exercise several hours a day, and they have a great attitude, they have great family support, they have great social interaction, and they just keep right on going. And it's heartwarming and encouraging to see how people have reacted.
Let me use the nasty word, obesity. what's the relationship between our fat society and Parkinson's?
Well, of course, being in shape is a big deal, whether we have Parkinson's disease or not. I don't see correlation between weight or obesity and Parkinson's disease. I've seen
really?
I've seen people in great shape that have developed Parkinson's. Seen people who are big that have Parkinson's. I don't see any relationship between the two. Parkinson's disease is not a result of being overweight.
Okay.
It's more, as we talked about earlier, it's more genetics and environment, and just the luck or the unluck of the draw.
Jim also has a very nice brochure. In fact, I have a copy of it here in front of me right now, with information we can help. Here's how, and it goes into a lot of information, suggestions, programs, activities, operation support groups, things that are available. Give him a call. Again, he mentioned his telephone number here is 810-0695.
That's right.
Or let me just suggest an easy way to get in touch with him is to email him. Just simply jim@parkinsonoklahoma.com. Write the word Oklahoma out. jim@parkinsonoklahoma.com. They also have an office in Tulsa. But there is hope. If you know somebody who's experiencing some of the symptoms of Parkinson, one of the worst things to do is to try to suffer it all alone and to try to beat it yourself. You need somebody with you. Jim, it's been so good to have you back on the show again.
Well, it's always my pleasure, Glenn. Thank you.
I appreciate so much the way you helped my friend Horace out. He appreciated your coming out. And in fact, you put him in touch with a group that was having some kind of a meeting in Tulsa, and he went over to that, and they just really did appreciate what was going on. And even though it got him, there is still hope. I'm Glenn Howard, Senior World Radio. We've been visiting today with Jim Keating, Parkinson Foundation of Oklahoma. Jim, thanks so much for coming in. We got to go. We'll be back at the same time next week. Until then, be kind to somebody, especially yourself. See you next week. Bye-bye now.
I'm on the top of the world looking down on creation, and the only explanation I can find